everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and welcome to Dear Profiler Pat. There's a great question that was sent to me, and I think it will relate to so many of you because I think we all have this in our lives, and oftentimes we just don't know what we should do. And the question was, should I work to connect with a distant parent? In other words, I have a parent that it isn't going well with them. We've either broken as far as a family connection goes as a parent and child, or they're difficult to deal with to the point where I'm fed up, or and I'm like, but I have children. Should I just break it off with my parent and let my children not have a grandparent? What should I do? What would make what? How can I be a decent person and a decent parent to my own child when I'm in this kind of family relationship? What do I do? And it is very difficult. We all have somebody, I think, that we have. It might not be a parent. It could be a brother. It could be a sister. It could be a child. It could be a grandchild. But we have somebody that something's not working well with for whatever reasons. Do we keep working to make it work, or do we give up? Or what do we do? So I'm going to read you this letter. I think it's just stay with me through the letter because I want you to hear it in full, because you'll see how complicated it is and how complicated maybe your situation is as well. All right, before I do that, I do want to welcome you to the channel. Dear Profiler Pat, if you're new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. Hit the bell for notifications, and be sure to check my playlist, because I have the point of playlist is for you to look for subjects that are most interesting to you. Like, is it relationships? Is it life? Is it aging? What is it? Check my playlist to see if there are questions in there that I've given advice on that might relate to something you're dealing with or one of your family members is dealing with. So check the playlist. All right, here we go. All right. Dear Profiler Pat, I'm a 30-year-old female, and my father is 65-year-old. He went no contact with me 2 years ago, and I struggle with guilt. I just want to point out here that guilt is a big part of it. Either they're making us feel guilty, or we feel guilty just because that's the way we're going to feel if we can't make things work, or maybe we do have something to feel guilty about. We're going to have to analyze the guilt issue in our relationships. You're probably wondering what I did to my father to make him go no contact with me, because generally a parent doesn't initiate no contact with their adult children, particularly when it severs a relationship with their only biological grandchildren. I am the only person I know in the situation is extremely isolated. You may think you're the only person in that situation. Maybe in your friends it's not happening. Believe me, a lot of people watching this, put in your comments, because I'm pretty sure it's happening to you too. At least some of you. It's a long story, but my father was physically present through my childhood and early 20s. Well, that's a good thing, at least. At least he was there. Sometimes we have to understand that our parents are maybe limited in certain ways, but if they stay there and raise you and you grow up in a home that wasn't completely a wreck or destroyed, there's something to that. So be thankful for what you got. He was there physically, although he was not mentally present. He spent all his time watching TV in his man cave and only cared to listen to us if it was to share our accomplishments, like if we got a compliment from our teachers about an assignment. One way you could say, well, that's great. He cared about it, that we were succeeding. On the other hand, he may be a narcissist, and you just wanted to hear that he was a good father because you did well. It's hard to say. My mother and father divorced when I was around 23 years old, and I continued to have a relationship with my father, although it felt forced. I would visit him at his apartment, and we would watch a movie, and he would usually dump his emotional load on me. He was depressed, he was lonely, etc. Okay, I want to comment here. Sometimes a relationship, when you say it feels forced and you only got to sit around and watch TV with him, if that's all he ever did anyway, maybe that's just what you got to do with him. It's like you're not going to go on vacations together. You're not going to share great moments together. You're just going to watch a TV show with them, and that's about as much as you're going to get. And I'm going to tell you why that's important to remember that when I give you the final advice on this. When he decided to marry the woman he was dating for 3 months, I included both him and her, in my life as much as I could. He was never fond of my husband due to his immigration status or lack thereof. I had been dating my husband for 6 years before we married, and refused ever to even meet him or take the relationship seriously. Okay, whenever we have somebody who's supposed to be someone who cares about us and they're not thrilled about our mate or our living situation, sometimes we don't take that very well. We're like, okay, if you can't accept my living situation, my choice of significant others, well, the hell with you. But sometimes they can't get past whatever their issue is. Just saying. Sometimes we have to understand that they have issues about certain things, and we just may not see eye to eye on that. Is it right? Is it wrong? No, it just is. Um, but he played nice when I told him I was pregnant with my first son. He was invited to all events related to my first son, baby shower, baby party, birthday parties, etc. Although he had not attended all due to him moving across the country, which I understood and never gave him a hard time about. In other words, for whatever reasons, he moved to the other side of the country, so he wasn't available for those things. And that happens with a lot of people. I mean, when one is moving on with their life with a he had married someone. I don't know if he moved across the country because of her or because he had a job or because he wanted warm weather. I don't know. I don't think our parents are obligated to stay next door to us and give up their lives elsewhere to theoretically be that the grandparent is always there. I mean, I understand sometimes you really want that. I live next door to my granddaughter, and my daughter, and her husband live right there, and I'm right next door. And so I see my granddaughter. I've helped care for my granddaughter. I pick her from school and all that. I have a very close relationship with my granddaughter. My ex-husband moved on the other side of the country with his second wife, and he shows up a couple times a year and does some FaceTime stuff. And I know my daughter wished he would move, but I'm like, I kind of understand why he's where he is. That's where he had his job, his new wife, and he likes to play golf. He's doing what he wants to live his life, and his life is not his daughter's life, even if his granddaughter is there. It's not his life. And sometimes we are living just there because you want to be invited over for birthday parties and maybe to go occasional soccer games. Maybe it's just not enough for you to live your life. Now, for me, it happens to work out because I'm happy here and I get my granddaughter on top of it. But I understand where he's coming from. So maybe that's your dad. I don't know. But I agree that it was nice that you weren't upset about the fact that he chose to be far away and that's why he wasn't there. That's good. I understood that and never gave him a hard time about it. I also was the sole attendee at his wife's birthday brunch that it took me 4 hours to travel to. That was nice of her. Her own adult children did not attend, even though they live much closer. I even logged online to watched him and his wife perform in a choir at church several times because he asked me to, and that was nice. So you were trying to have some kind of relationship there. I sent photos of my son regularly and texted with updates, just trying to get some context, what I was trying to include them in my life, which is great. You seem to be trying to include them in a way that wasn't overwhelming, but was something sort of acceptable to them as well. And I think that was a good job you did. Fast forward to a couple years ago, I received a text message after he hadn't responded to my calls in weeks. I was ready to call in a welfare check. He proceeded to state that our relationship no longer makes him happy, alongside a bulleted list of 5 reasons. To give you an example of 2 of the reasons, to break the ice a bit, while we were having lunch with his new wife, after I'd announced my pregnancy and said I was expecting a boy, I told him we had picked out a name. I told my dad that it was the name of several other men in the family. He pondered for a minute and said he didn't have an idea, so I told him it would be Robert, the name of my grandfather. He smiled and seemed fine at the time. But in this text, 2 years after this incident, he said that I had led him to believe my child would be named after him. Another of the reasons he said was that I hid my relationship with my husband from him for years, but I only did that because my parents told me never to speak of him. Bring him around because he was a non-U.S. citizen and had a funny name, and the relationship would not have been taken seriously. So in other words, the parents pushed her away with that, we don't want to know about him. And finally came around when there was a grandchild. But now he's saying that, hey, it's kind of one of those things where they do something to you, but then they blame you for it. People do that. Okay. That's a sign of narcissism, by the way. What I saw and still see, this is what he sends his text and the dad. What I saw and still see is a pattern of disrespect and lack of care that hurts and makes me unhappy. I think it's best that we stay out of touch with each other. I'll add that your mother had a big hand in this decision. Interesting. They're not even married. You should also know that I'm done with your brother too. Well, okay, he's like kicking both his kids out of his out of his life. His attitude toward me is absolutely disgusting. Sometimes parents and their children just don't get along, which is sometimes true. This is the case here. There is no real respect or real caring coming from you. If you ever decide you want a real relationship with me, a relationship where I'm treated like your father and not an acquaintance, get in touch with me. Otherwise, let's say goodbye. Now, I have seen this written to somebody who actually was problematic. In other words, they did not give respect to the parent. There was always this thing where no matter what the parent did to try to be nice and helpful, that person turned on them and attacked them for things and called, so sometimes this letter could be written to a child who is causing trouble. In this particular case, she seems to not think that she's done anything to deserve this. And I can't say that she has, according to the letter. What does he expect for respect? What is that exactly? He hasn't said what that is. Is that just his way of, no matter how much you give me, it's not enough? You don't constantly, I don't know what the issue is where he wants way more than she can provide. But he's saying, since you don't give me enough respect, you just treat me like an acquaintance, I'm done with you. I don't want to waste my time with you anymore. So she says, so I'm honoring his wishes, blocked his number, and have stayed out of his life. He doesn't even know I had another baby 6 months ago. Okay, 8 months ago. First of all, I don't know why he felt it was necessary to block his number, since he wasn't actually contacting you theoretically, unless he was contacting you more than once to hound you or to insult you, to keep telling you that you're a bum. I don't know whether that was it. Unless he was harassing you, you could leave the number alone. And if he ever wanted to call him and say, hey, sorry I wrote that text, he would be able to. So I don't know that I agree with the blocking of the number, unless it, if there's, it doesn't make any sense, as he says, I'm not going to contact you anymore. So I don't understand why the number needs to be blocked. Just saying. All right. So profiler Pat, am I cheating my children out of a relationship with their grandfather? How am I supposed to feel if he passes away one day and we are left on bad terms? This is what I struggle with the most. Thanks, Pat, for any advice. Okay. Now, I want to point out something to all of you that I learned years ago when I think I might have been a teenager, because I had some issues. And I didn't know how to deal with them. And then I read a book called Summer of My German Soldier. Remember this name, Summer of My German Soldier. You can get it on Amazon. It's a teenage book. It's about a Jewish girl in the South who feels like her parents don't give a crap about her. And so she's trying to deal with, she's becoming, she's going through puberty and all this kind of stuff, becoming a young lady. And she feels like her parents don't love her or care about her. Now, she had a woman helping at the house, housekeeper. I can't remember quite what she was, but she was a Black woman of that particular age back in the day. And I can't remember what, this is German soldier, so I'm going to say it's a World War II. And so I'm going to read you what this woman said to her, because this woman loved her. The woman who was caring for her, which is not her parents that cared very little about her. But this was either a nanny or a housekeeper. I can't remember. I haven't read the story in a long time. But she was a Black woman. And so forgive me I'm going to read it as it's written. So don't get on me for having a Black accent or accent from back in the day. Okay. But I want to read it to you because that's what is written here. That girl came to her and says, I don't know what to do. My parents, it seems like they don't love me enough. I don't know what to do about this. She said this, and this stuck with me for all of my life. I ain't never forecast me no aspersions on other folks, but your folks ain't never gonna feel nothing good regarding you. And they ain't the number one best quality folks neither. They sure ain't. When I go shopping and I sees the label stamped irregular or seconds, Then I know I won't have to pay so much for it. But you've got yourself some irregular seconds for folks, irregular seconds, folks, and you've been paying more than top dollar for them. So just don't go wishing for what ain't never going to be. That is brilliant. What is she saying? She's saying you've got damaged goods for parents, and you paying like they're just something you just bought in a fancy store. You're paying top dollar for damaged goods. You're paying way too much for something that'll never be what you want it to be. You envision it to be brand new, top quality, finest of parents, but that isn't what you got. What you got is some damaged goods. And let me tell you, folks, a lot of you will have damaged goods for relatives. It could be your mom, it could be your dad, it could be sisters, brothers, it could be your grandchildren or children, whatever. There are damaged goods. Some of them could have severe narcissistic disorders. They could even be psychopaths. They could have all kinds of issues that aren't your fault, but just because they're human beings born on this planet and went through the life that they went through. Sometimes when we look back, we don't realize what damage was done to them. Maybe they had damaged goods for parents and they became damaged goods. So we have people who are damaged in some way. And the problem is we're paying top dollar for damaged goods. So we are trying to treat them as if they're giving us back something so positive and wonderful and caring and loving, when that is not what's happening. And so you're giving and giving and giving and giving, and you're not getting a whole lot back. And what's worse, it's fine to give and give and give and not get a lot back, I guess. But it's not okay to give and give and give and get back pain and misery from them, hurtful stuff from them. That's a whole different issue. So you got to start looking at this and understand that you've got what you've got. What did she say? Just don't go wishing for what ain't never going to be. And we do that a lot. We do. We wish we had the mother that we wanted. We wish we had the father that we wanted. We wish we had whatever sibling that we wanted. We want to be best friends. We want them to cherish us. But it isn't happening because that person is incapable of doing that for whatever reasons. It could just be because they're a little somehow damaged in some way. And they could be pretty awful people, damaged in such a way that they're psychopathic and they're just going to abuse you and narcissistic and insult you and manipulate you and bully you. And you just keep trying and trying and trying to mend that relationship, to make that relationship work. And you keep getting the brunt of all of it. Stop doing that. Step back and say, this is the way it is. Maybe that person is never going to be the person I wish they were. Now, maybe there are times when people change over time. Maybe one day they'll pop up and be different. Probably not, but hey, we can always say, you never know. Keep the door open just in case. But on the other hand, you don't have to keep letting them walk through that door and beat you up. And you don't have to keep going to them and let you beat you up. So you have to decide, how much do I give to the damaged goods? How much price do I pay? And if you have a wonderful relationship, of course, you can give and give, and you're going to get and get, and it's going to be all jolly and fantastic. If you have great parents and, you bring your grandkids over and they love your grandkids, and it's just awesome. It can be awesome. I mean, we have here this in the letter writer, her parents didn't accept the mate she picked, and barely seemed to accept the grandchild. And I myself, when I married my husband, he was from Jamaica. And my parents were kind of like, well, they lived in a very, very rich white area of town. And here I come along with this young Jamaican man, and I don't know that they were thrilled. Maybe because I thought it was a bad idea, a mix of races or a mix of cultures or educational issues. Oh God, whatever the heck it was. But over time, they came. They had the wedding at their home, and they welcomed him in every one of the dinners. And then when we had two children, two biological children, one boy, one girl, and then we adopted a young a child who was 5 years old, and he was black, um, from the state of Delaware, and and I, when he brought him into the family, now my parents, these people who, who had not been around any black people in their life, not only had a black son-in-law and two biracial kids, but now they had a black grandson too. But you know what I always remember? The day my father took us to go eat, I think it was Applebee's or something. But I remember he had the 3 children by him. He had the 2 boys on either side, and then my daughter was a little older, so she was on the other side. He so proudly walked into Applebee's with his 3 grandchildren, and I was walking behind, and I just remember thinking, isn't that amazing? And that's just wonderful. So when you give and you get back, and you can work things out, that is fabulous. But what if that doesn't happen? What if that is not the way it is? Well, then you have to decide to curtail how much you give in a relationship that you're not getting or even being abused in, especially the abuse. If you're not getting as much, okay, you can live with that probably. But sometimes there's abuse that comes with it, and you got to put a stop to that abuse. And you have to figure out where that abuse is and how to stop it. I had a situation with their brother-in-law, and I invite him and his wife for dinner, and I'd cook all this food, and they'd show up like an hour late and then say they already ate. What the heck? It's like they would do this with just completely like that, like I didn't matter, and all the work I put in didn't matter. Well, I stopped inviting them for dinner, but you know what I did do? I invited them to barbecues. So if we had all the family over for a barbecue, I invited them because it didn't matter if they showed up or not, because there were already enough people there to make any difference. But I would never cook another dinner just for them. But I invited them to the barbecues. So you can find ways, maybe, to include that person who is damaged goods by allowing them to have some level of involvement in your life without giving too much, putting too much of your heart into it, too much of your time into it. Just don't overdo it. Just do what you can. Now, in this particular case, the letter writer, she did go over and try to see the father and was watching TV with him. And she wasn't obviously overexcited about that. I don't know whether he that's what he felt or whether he didn't feel that. But even though she did that, it wasn't enough for him. So he was like, "Well, I'm going to cut you off because you didn't do more than that," even if she didn't know what the more was. When somebody does that to you, and they're like a hole that cannot be filled. And no matter how much you put in that hole, it never gets filled up. So you can't do enough for that person. You can't see them enough. You can't give them enough. You can't praise them enough. Just nothing you can do will work, because they always have to let you feel like you're a failure. That makes them feel less of a failure. And if that's what they're going to do to you, that's abuse. And you will then have to curtail their relationship, or they'll curtail it for you, which is apparently what this guy did. He just said, "Hey, daughter, I'm done." All right. If he says that, and there's nothing I feel I could have done more, except I would leave the phone open unless he called and it was abusive. Then I'd block it. But otherwise, I'd say I would just send a letter back. So my doors are also always open on my side, and I'd leave it at that. And then maybe you'll never hear from him again. Maybe not. But if you're giving more than if you're giving a lot to this situation, and you're paying a lot for damaged goods just to be ignored or abused or whatever, you're paying too much. Don't do that anymore. Yeah, definitely don't do that anymore. Now, I want to answer the question about the grandkids. What about the grandkids? What about them? What is it? They're going to miss out on this relationship with the grandfather. And what kind of relationship would that be? Here's a man who doesn't seem to want to even attempt to have a relationship with the grandkids to any extent. One of the things you can tell your kids as they're growing up is everybody just tell them the same thing. I just told you. Well, everybody, they have different kinds of lives, and they have different kinds of abilities. And sometimes they can't do things that we wish they could do. Sometimes they have issues for whatever reasons. And not every one of your relatives is going to give you the same attention in your life, or at certain times in your life. You may have a relative that gives you lots of attention for 10 years and then move away. And then you have another relative who gives you attention at a different time in life, but then they weren't there earlier. These things happen. You have to help your children understand that people come into your life and they sometimes leave your life, or come in. They're more involved and they're less involved. And they're going to be the same way with people they know. They are. It's just the way it is. I've been next to my granddaughter for 10 years now. I've had a lot of involvement, but as I know she's reaching 11, she comes over less. She doesn't feel a need to come over and make me play Candyland anymore. So I see her less than I used to see her. The times I do see her still, we still have fun. I like to take, she goes to Girl Scouts. I like to take her. She always wants to go get sushi before Girl Scouts. So it's fun. We go there, we laugh, we joke, we talk about all kinds of things about life and stuff. We have special times, but they're not the same type of times we had when she was younger and would spend hours here doing Legos and stuff. She's like not as thrilled to be playing with grandma anymore. She wants to go play with her friends. Now, what happens when she gets to be a teen? I might not see her at all, hardly ever. Then the question is, what if I just want to go live in Hawaii instead? I want to go to a beautiful place. I want to have beautiful weather year round. And something takes me there. Am I required to stay next door to my granddaughter forever so I can see her once a month? Am I required to do that? Do I love her less if I move? So people, the children need to know that everybody in their life, grandparents, uncles and aunts, whatever, different things happen. And so they're going to be in different places. And all you do is explain that to them. And if he says, why don't I ever see that grandfather? Well, he has some things going on in his life and he's just not able to reach out. He's got these things going. Luckily, you got me. Luckily, you got Dad. Luckily, you got maybe some other grandparent, and maybe we'll see him again in the future. Maybe, he'll come around and change up a little bit, but hey, you got people in your life, and be thankful for them and don't expect everything from everybody. You tell your kids that. Tell yourself that. Most important, tell yourself that, because you're suffering from it more than your kid is. And maybe, that is, you're just paying too much for damaged goods. And it's sad. Maybe you wanted a different kind of father. You wanted a more loving father. You wanted a father whose eyes lit up when he sees you. You want a father who would do anything for you, and you haven't got that. You haven't got that. What do? Well, I think it was Dr. Laura who once said this, which I thought was very, very smart. Somebody said that she had horrible life growing up, terrible parents. And she goes, I don't know what to do about it. And Dr. Laura said, well, you know what the amazing thing is? When you grow up, you get to make your own family. That's in your control. And, it's not going to be perfect either. And maybe it'll all go to hell. You never know, because that's the way life is. But hey, you didn't get that, what you wanted when you're growing up. You can have that. You can try to make that yourself. And I think I did that. My parents were good parents, but very kind of they're kind of a little distancy. I don't know if it was the times I was growing up in. I was born in 1955, and I don't think parents were, I don't know, at least my parents weren't as effusive as all that, or that involved in what we did. They just assumed we went to school and did what we did, and I wanted something a little different. And so I chose, when I got married, to have a big old farmhouse and homeschool my kids, and I nursed my kids and all that kind of crap. And I got this lifestyle that I didn't get when I was growing up, and I really enjoyed it. Now my kids will probably complain that, oh my God, my parents made us live in a farmhouse and homeschool it. I don't want that. So I'm going to make a life that I want. See, it works that way every generation. But you do have control over making certain decisions on how to make your life work as best it can, how to deal with the different people in your life. And you don't have to cut everybody off. You can find ways, just like come to a barbecue at our house. It was funny when they did come to some things, or like that they were just extra people. I didn't have to cook just for them. I didn't get pissed off at them either, and I enjoyed their company. They were fun people in that way, as long as I didn't depend on them for anything. They were fun if they showed up. Some people are like that. They're great people for certain situations. And that's that you can stick with those certain situations and not expand it to things that is not going to work for them. Like if they're terrible people for going on vacation with, Jesus, don't invite them for vacation. No, don't do that. Don't do that, because they're going to go on vacation with you and everybody's going to be miserable. Even though that's not what they're good at, don't do that. Do something different. Maybe they like going to the ball game. Maybe they're fun at a ball game. Go to a ball game with them. Pick something that works. Don't pick all the things that don't work. Don't try to make things work that will never work. It's a waste of your time, it's a waste of your energy, and it will just depress you, because then you fail. Don't keep failing. Find situations where you're going to be a success at, and your relationship will be a success. Even if it's a tiny relationship, at least that tiny relationship will be okay during those particular periods of time. And if they won't even go for that, if they're going to cut you off or just be horrible people entirely, you say, well, my door's open. Let them go. Let them go, and focus on all the people around you who are great. And tell your grandkids that too. Let's focus on all the people around us who make our lives wonderful. Let's not focus on the few out there who just got something happening in their lives that make it difficult to be around them. Let's not focus on that. Let's focus on what we have. So that's my advice to my letter writer and to all of you. I hope that means something to you, and I hope it helps you. And again, Summer of My German Soldier. I hope that's the name of the book. Wonderful book. Check it out. It's a great book for teens too, because it taught me that, and it helped me get through life without being so bitter, without being so upset, without feeling like a failure sometimes, where I could just say, hey, maybe it's not me, maybe it is them, and let it go, and decide how much I'm going to pay for the different levels of goods in my life, people in my life. Whether if they're top notch, I'll give more. If they're about here, I'll give a little less. And if they're some seriously damaged goods, maybe I'll just give just a little bit, and maybe not even any at all, if that's the way it goes. So anyway, thank you for being here. Again, if you would like to have me answer a question, please write to me, profilerpatbrown@gmail.com. And don't forget, again, subscribe to the channel. Let's keep the channel going so I can answer more questions, which I really actually enjoy doing very much. Thank you for being here. Bye.